everybody else is wrong. But Brigadier Mkhwanazi is always right in your own perspective. You are obviously supporting him. Commissioner MADLANGA crushed Kemi Bihari in a ruthless manner. Kemi Bihari tried to lie badly in order to protect Julius Mkhwanazi, but he ended up receiving a grilling that nobody has received from the commission so far. Watch as Commissioner MADLANGA, calm. Boloy and others held his throat until he made a shocking confession. He was given a 600,000 rands increase in salary as compensation for supporting a corrupt top politician. He tried to deny, but was completely exposed. What do you have to say about top politicians and police heads being implicated in the commission yet not arrested? Is that not corruption at its peak? Let's have your opinion in the comments section. And if you want all corrupt figures in South Africa arrested, then hit the like button and subscribe for more.
When it comes to that, a central allegation advanced before this commission, particularly by Mr. Gneza, is that the adjustment of my remuneration in 2023 constituted a so-called loyalty bonus. And that loyalty bonus was linked to my so-called involvement
Which heading are we dealing with?
Number 24, Chair.
Page 7, Chair.
Page 7.
The top of page 7, paragraph 24.
Thank you.
And that was then linked to say that, no, Mr. Bihari stopped the investigation or the disciplinary proceedings against Mkhwanazi and then received this loyalty bonus. The allegation for me, Chair, is unfounded. I never involved in any disciplinary processes at staff at a lower level. My engagements with Mr. Erasmus was to look at the compliance issues. What would be the prospects? What are the glaring issues you can see in the files? And how to make I'm answerable. People live their life. I said to him, but we need to start looking. Gneza said, but he acted as a shop steward. I mean, there's some way they say, you expect shop stewards to act like this. Chair, in our environment where you face litigation costs which are spiraling, and to understand, you have to play the other side and say, what could be this impact that could lead to a possible loss of the case for the city, and future risk that we could then be sued. So how do you mitigate against these issues? That is what my intention was. And in terms of guiding that. So when I was appointed as the head of department, Chair, paragraph 25, with effect from the 1st of June 2023, the all-inclusive remuneration package approved for the position was, I think it was 2,055,000. When I was a divisional head, immediately prior to that, because of the 8 years that I've been at the city, my salary had already come through an amount of about 2,088,000. So effectively, I know I should have been a better person perhaps at that stage and say, no, even with a new function, with the added responsibilities of the head of department, I must take a pay cut. But I'm saying that I asked the city manager to say, but how is it now that I've got to take a pay cut for running 4 divisions instead of 1? So I did not sign my contract because I was negotiating to say, but what can be done? I was just given an undertaking to say, no, there is a process for salary review that goes to organize structures within the city. The city manager had no power to increase my salary. She had no power. What she did was give me the undertaking to say, because I signed my contract of employment on the last day, the 30th of June 2023, having to consider and go through that, but what do I do? At the risk of not having, because my contract as divisional head would come to an end, I would have to consider family issues and all of those matters, and what do I do? So on the undertaking to say that, no, we'll submit a evaluation to the Remuneration Committee and let them decide, and I'll deal with the issues thereafter. I also picked on numerous other irregularities pertaining to heads of departments' appointments, including which has been raised by most of the metros that I know in Gauteng have been raising issues on irregularities in the appointment, Because after the 1st of November 2022, when the Municipal Systems Act was amended, there were new provisions brought in, and all the heads of departments appointed after that needed to be complied with that. But the council and certain members or certain parties in council were constantly trying to defeat that. Why? For no other purpose than say, no, we want to control a head of department. I was not prepared to do that. And I'll talk to other incidents why. So the issue of permanence of heads of departments, the issue of members of the panel, these all arose. The issue of the MEC's functions arose. And what could the MEC do? And I had an appointment even with the MEC. I must say I find him to be a very wonderful character. Any report?
Let's look at the heading of the letter written by Mr. Zulu and Mr. Mahwiting, which had your full support. You said earlier,
yes,
you even took it to the municipal manager, but that you wanted to correct some little administrative thing, but not so much the content of what the letter raised. Look at the heading, Volkswagen CAS 262/03/2023, corruption, fraud, and corruption, and then in brackets Julius Dr. Mkwanazi. The reference to the CAS number, CAS number, that's clearly the criminal process, and it is only that criminal process that this letter addresses. And the two people who have signed this letter are your juniors. And in fact, in so many words, in your statement before us today, you say you appointed Mr. Zulu because of his experience in prosecuting. So you basically wanted to attack the criminal process, even if you're doing it within the municipality. The idea was to say, there's nothing here. That's the point I'm making. And indeed, if you go through the entire letter, it deals with the charges, and it will say, the elements of such and such a criminal offense are A, B, C, D. A, B, and C have not been satisfied because of A, B, C, D reasons. It's trying to puncture holes through the possibility of any criminal charges. So it's on that basis, and you identified with this. You identified with this letter. It is on that basis that I suggest to you that there may well be, and I think that's an understatement to say there may well be substance in the attack by Chief Mapieye, Commissioner Spies, and Mr. Nkiza, which is to the effect that you were protecting Mr. Brigadier Mkwanazi.
Chair, the issue of that letter was, yes, it refers to the criminal processes, because my interest would have been to report on that. I initiated that issue. I referred to you in Jabulu to look at the elements. What do we need to look at in terms of my report to MPAC and to Council, where we cover this and we say to them, this evidence is linked to that. The DPP process can never be a challenge for us internally. The only issue we get involved in terms of the city is any of the city officials who are charged as a result of their holding an office representing the city. But not, if the cases were against Julius Mkwanazi, it should have been then proceeded by the DPP. Mine and my interest in the team, and speaking to Jabulo specifically, was to say, let's look at the issue, because when we do our report, and that is why the document never went out. It was in preparation for engaging with that once we received the DPP, to look at our finalization in terms of what report do I have to do, from a compliance report to MPAC, and to that, to say that this is what the engagements are, this is how the fraud is covered, this is how the corruption issues are covered, and that is the report we did. We have no power to engage with
and nothing at all about the recommendation which concerns something that was within the remit of the municipality, the recommendation to discipline. Completely silent on that.
Chair, because that was the process in terms of the directive by IPID to the Chief of Police for the disciplinary process. That would have been accepted, would have continued that way. My interest was then to look at then what is our reports in terms of compliance. One of the delegated functions is for me to report on compliance of non-compliance issues to council and to the mayor and to the city manager. So those are the functions I was looking at from the criminal aspect.
I suggest again that you were not in the least bothered by that recommendation because you knew that, this doesn't bother us. It's within what we can do within the municipality that doesn't bother, and we know what we are going to do about it, which is nothing.
Chair, I was not aware, I don't know where that process has taken or what. I was not involved in that HR process or the issue of MAPA in terms of the IPAD report. I did not accept there was going to be nothing because mine was focusing on the other aspect. That departments, they are responsible for that. They got the directive on the disciplinary process, and they ought to have done that. It's not about me knowing that there was going to be nothing. Mine was to say that this is what our purposes are. I was very clear to DH.
Insofar as the IPAD report or memorandum directed the city to institute disciplinary proceedings against Commissioner Mkhwanazi, you didn't have any involvement to that, you didn't follow up on that, you didn't have a discussion with the Chief of Police about that?
No, it was a process for disciplinary, for the directive you mentioned, was on that side. Mine was only on other processes when I engaged with my divisional head to look at fraud and corruption.
Okay. Now, were you aware of what the consequences for the institution, for the city would be if they don't comply with the directive from IPAD?
Yes, in terms of the legislation, I didn't deal with it specifically here, but again, it was a directive from IPAD which should have been followed up between IPAD and the Chief of Police and HR. I wasn't involved in that process there.
Okay. But are there consequences for
Erasmus, did you anywhere say, of all the things I'm saying, but we have a good case on which Brigadier Mkhwanazi may be disciplined, and that case is that he has misrepresented that there is in
the absence of a
existence
statement,
the donations memorandum. On that, we have a good case. Did you say that to Erasmus? Did you say that to Erasmus?
Chair, I did not say that
to Colonel Erasmus. I'm very sorry for not using
I did not say that to Lieutenant Colonel Erasmus because I've accepted that the Brigadier's Mkhwanazi's statements also confirmed that he did misrepresent to Christine. My focus has always been on what is our case, because when I find that when people in an environment in many courts will come through and they can change, so we can secure from a cities-wide position and secure that Christine in no way puts the city's case at risk. And these are the other issues. So that is what my interest was. So when I said to Lieutenant Colonel Erasmus, in paragraph 62, if the investigation was complete, so if he felt it was complete, proceed without extending the suspension, because...
You see, my difficulty is that of all the many things you said, and of all the many difficulties you said were facing the EMPD, not once do you say, but we have a good case here. That's my problem.
Chair,
it's like you just did not want to make any pronouncement against Brigadier Mkhwanazi. So of all the many things, the difficulties and everything else that you raise, not once do you say, however, we have a very good case against Brigadier Mkhwanazi on this narrow or on this limited aspect. Nowhere.
Chair, as I said, for me, engaging with him, I accepted the MOU story, I accepted the fact of the operational plan issues. My focus was then on us concretizing our case. And hence I said to him, if you feel that all the investigations are complete,
that's proceed. About your case. That's about your case. What I'm raising with you is about your case. It may not have been about the entire case, but it was a crucial part of the case because it related to the registration of the motor vehicles. That was a crucial issue. That was a key part of the case against Brigadier Mkhwanazi. Why are you silent about that?
Chair, it was a key point, it was a key issue with regard to the case against Mkhwanazi for the donations. The issue would be on the witnesses of Christine, because that is, it's not about him just being disciplined, Chair. It's about him testifying on behalf of the city. It says that you are giving, I've received a letter of donation.
Who testifying for the city? Who?
Christine.
I'm talking about Brigadier Mkhwanazi, the case which is quite strong. You've accepted yourself. You've accepted that on this, there's a misrepresentation.
Yes.
And you've also accepted, quite early on when I was engaging you, you've accepted that this was a prosecutable case. This was a case on which he could be disciplined. You've accepted that.
Chair, I confirm that.
Yes.
I've accepted that.
Yes.
But beyond that, beyond a prosecutable case, the actual process to continue with the prosecution and to make sure that there's a successful prosecution, that is where my focus was on. So in engaging with any Erasmus, this is what I'm saying to him. How do we close the loopholes? If the witness that's coming to show that he processed the donations, and then he received a MOU which was unsigned, at the very face value, he should have realized that it's not approved and raised a question with
on this limited aspect. You did not need Mr. Chief Wicks. Agree? On this narrow, on what I've been referring to as a limited or narrow issue, you did not need Mr. Chief Wicks.
Now, on that issue, we did not need Jeff Wicks.
Yes.
But
okay.
Remember, I was looking at this docket and the possible charges. There were almost six charges, I think.
You've already said you did not need him. On this narrow, limited issue, you did not need Deputy Chief Mzolo.
No, I did not need Mzolo.
Yes. No. On this narrow issue, you did not need DCP Kwabe.
In terms of speaking to the donations, especially with the 300,000 donations, what we understood by the process
throughout in my debate with you, leading up to your agreement that he could be disciplined, Major Brigadier Mkhwanazi could be disciplined. Throughout, there's been no mention of a statement by Mr. Kwabe. Your agreement was based on the fact that there was a misrepresentation by Brigadier Mkhwanazi, and that just on that basis he could be disciplined. That has nothing to do with DCP Kwabe.
From me at least, still at that page 282, and this goes to, I just want you to look at what the charges were, and then on the back of this very past conversation that you've had with the chairperson about what letters you required or what statements you still required, I just want you to look at the charges. The first charge is gross dishonesty in respect of a letter of confirmation allegedly issued by you on or about the 21st of October 2021. Do you remember what that was about?
I think that letter was to whom it may concern.
Yes, that this man, that whoever is the bearer of this letter.
His work, yes.
Yes. So that didn't require Zolo, Wicks, and Kwabe, and Stein to say anything, right?
No, Chair, on its own, it did not require, if you proceeded with that charge.
Yes.
To say that you issued a letter, which was, he didn't have the authority to issue such a letter, a blanket letter.
Yes.
Because we do not know who could have been using that letter for what purposes.
Yes.
Yes.
So what I'm saying to you is that the shortcomings that you have listed here as potentially risky to any disciplinary proceedings, none of them are applicable to that charge. It has nothing to do with it.
Specifically on that note, Chair.
This particular charge, right? The second one, it says failure to perform your tasks diligently and to the best of your abilities by issuing an unauthorized letter to civilians. It's still the same thing.
In the same letter.
Allegations of gross dishonesty and possible corruption by receiving a donation in excess of limits as prescribed by council. Here we know it's at 300, at least that's what we were told. It related to the 300,000 training materials.
That's not correct, Chair. There's no limitation to the amounts of donation you can receive.
Yes. No, I'm not debating whether there is such a thing. I'm saying this charge, allegations of dishonesty, this did not involve Mr. Wicks at all. You didn't need a statement from Mr. Wicks for this.
No,
you didn't need a statement from Mr. Steyn for this, or you didn't even have to take into account Mr. Steyn's statement about this.
Yes, well.
Okay. All right. And you did not need Mzolo for this. Maybe you needed Gwabe. We do have an affidavit from Gwabe.
Just for clarity, Chair, if I may.
Yes.